Hello, my name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the Locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. I'm a master's level therapist, and my specialty is cognitive restructuring, meaning I introduce people to dysfunctional, unconscious beliefs that make decisions for them without their conscious awareness. I also provide people with tools, real tools, to help them reprogram their minds with functional beliefs. Welcome to my podcast, Improving the Bottom Line by Improving Staff Morale. This podcast is for managers, supervisors, and leaders, but anyone can benefit from the information. So how will we improve the bottom line by improving staff morale? By addressing dysfunctional, unconscious beliefs that produce low staff morale. Now, in my podcast, I only address one or two dysfunctional beliefs. Today, I'll be discussing one, but I also do one-day trainings based on the topics of my podcast where we discuss multiple dysfunctional, unconscious beliefs. This is series 2, episode 2 of my podcast. So a little bit about me. I have a bachelor's degree in business, a master's degree in business administration, a master's degree in social work. I was the personal assistant to the Honorable Reverend George K. Hartwell for 3 years. He was the director of the Community Leadership Institute, where I was his assistant. He was also the mayor of Grand Rapids, a phenomenal leader. I talk about my work with him when I'm discussing my qualifications because he was such a phenomenal leader, and I got to observe him in action for 3 years. As I said earlier, I specialize in cognitive restructuring, and I've created an award-winning program entitled The Lies That Bind. I have an adult model and a youth model of my program. Both models have been manualized, and I train other service providers in the model. My work has been featured on a PBS show entitled Inner Compass. I was the clinical director at 2 organizations, so I've served in leadership positions, and I've also served on various community boards and committees. When I do my podcast, I use certain terms interchangeably. Whenever you hear me use the words or terms, issues, unaddressed issues, and lies, I'm referring to dysfunctional, unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. These beliefs that I discuss are usually programmed into people's minds during the formative years. I say usually because there's exceptions to the rule. These beliefs are programmed into people's minds by how they're treated and by what they observe. But there's a third way. Some beliefs act as a landing pad that flags in other dysfunctional beliefs. For example, some people who have been programmed with the unconscious belief, compared to others, you come up short, also have the belief you have to compensate for your presence with goods and services. I call it the therefore factor. Compared to others, you come up short, therefore you have to compensate for your presence with goods and services. Most of these beliefs are totally antithetical to how people consciously think, what we consciously know, believe, and articulate. I say most, because some individuals who struggle with perfectionism, they are aware to a certain extent of the belief you have to do everything perfectly, but they may be unaware of some of that belief's unconscious impact. For example, a person who struggles with the belief you have to do everything perfectly, most of them wouldn't expect a nurse to be an expert chef with no training. Now, there's exceptions to the rules. So you say, some people may say, well, I know a nurse who cooks very well. I'm just using it as an example. Because see, the belief doesn't just say you have to do things that you've been trained to do perfectly. It says you have to do everything perfectly. So people put that, who are afflicted by that belief, they put that unrealistic expectation on themselves, but they don't put it on other people. not unless they're afflicted by the villain version. That's a victim belief. The villain version of the belief is people have to do everything perfectly. So if they're afflicted by that belief, they may put that expectation on others. But individuals who struggle with an unconscious belief that falls under the umbrella of a sense of entitlement, they may be totally unaware of that belief. For example, some people struggle with the unconscious belief, people have to accept abuse from you without question. That belief is unconscious. People wouldn't walk into the office one day and say, hello. I believe people have to accept abuse from me without question. The belief is unconscious, but it'll make individuals who are afflicted by the belief get indignant when someone tries to defend themselves. So if they're being verbally abusive to someone and someone speaks up and challenges them on the way they're talking to them, they get indignant. How dare you? How dare you not accept this verbal abuse from me? How dare you question it? So that's how these beliefs work, because they're so opposite of how most of us think consciously. It's hard to fight an invisible enemy. That's the power of the unconscious mind. And Sigmund Freud says that in order to help people, you have to bring the information that's in their unconscious minds to their conscious awareness. I agree with his theory. My techniques are just a little different. So let's talk about the belief that we're going to address today that produces low staff morale. I've coined this belief as the let's all pretend belief. It's you can do anything you want to people and act like it never happened, and they are obligated to believe you because you said so. It's a thief of revenue. This unconscious belief is a revenue thief because it makes people quit. People leave companies because they're being mistreated by people in leadership who are afflicted by this belief, and it hurts the bottom line. People who are afflicted by this belief, you can do anything you want to people and act like it never happened, and they are obligated to believe you because you said so. They will verbally abuse a person 1 minute and speak to someone in an appropriate manner a few minutes later with no apology. They will put unrealistic expectations on staff and act as if the expectations are within people's job descriptions. For example, expecting people to work a 60-hour work week while being paid for 40 hours. People afflicted by this belief will neglect their job duties and act as if others are supposed to pull their weight and keep up with their own job duties and act like it's not happening. Like, this is not happening. I'm not doing your job and my job. No, I'm not. And I have to keep up with both. People afflicted by this belief will often call in sick. They call in sick often, I mean, like when they're not sick. Go on vacation after being off sick for a week, and they weren't really sick. I'm talking about one of those weeks when they weren't really sick. And then they'll come back and be like, well, I'm on my vacation. See you in another week. And then they'll greet people when they come back all tan from their vacation and looking rested. They'll come back and greet people who've been pulling their weight with a hearty good morning, looking refreshed and well rested, while people that they're greeting are sitting at their desk with bags under their eyes because they've been working 70 and 80-hour work weeks, pulling their weight, and the person who likes to go on vacation and call in sick often, pulling their weight also. And it really becomes problematic when you're talking about people in leadership, because people who work under these people, they don't feel like they're able to challenge what's going on, but it's not like they're not aware. People afflicted by this belief will often neglect their job duties and then call a staff meeting to berate everyone for the problems that occur due to their neglect. They don't take responsibility for what's going on. They just blame other people. So Dr. R. Joseph, who's a noted expert in the fields of neuroscience and psychology, he says there's a way out for people who have been programmed with these types of dysfunctional beliefs. He says they have to be able to scrutinize their own lives so as to recognize the maladaptive, self-destructive patterns they've been engaging in. And in a lot of cases, they need help from a professional like myself or some other professional who specializes in CBT, cognitive restructuring, or psychodynamic approach. He says that they also have to become educated about the alternatives available, meaning alternative ways of thinking and alternative behaviors. So here's a functional belief that challenges the dysfunctional belief that we're discussing today, which is you can do anything you want to people and act like it never happened, and they are obligated to believe you because you said so. So the functional belief says if you mistreat people in your personal life or your professional life, it's adding insult to injury to act as if you are not doing what it is very obvious that you are doing. Many companies and organizations are experiencing high turnover rates because of abusive people in leadership positions. People don't have to accept verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, or physical abuse to have a job. There are many employment opportunities and or entrepreneurial opportunities available for individuals. People don't have to work 60-hour work weeks if they are being paid for 40 hours. Staff don't have to watch you neglect your job duties, assume your responsibilities, keep up with their own work, and act like they are oblivious to what's happening. If you have been taught to abuse people as a business practice, it's time to unlearn that strategy. You are losing good people because you are mistreating them. They're warning others about you. Treat people right. It will improve your bottom line. Get some new mentors. And I say that because some people who use abuse as a business tactic, they've been mentored. Someone taught them to do that. So you need a new mentor. So here's some strategies for addressing behaviors associated with a dysfunctional belief. So for the behaviors of verbally abusing a person 1 minute and speaking to that person in an appropriate manner a few minutes later with no apology, learn how to use assertive communication as opposed to aggressive communication. So that may involve you taking some trainings on communication styles. Address problems, not symptoms, and you'll feel less frustrated. Because sometimes when a leader is verbally abusing someone, speaking to someone inappropriately, it's because they're frustrated. And a lot of times the frustration can be traced to problems that keep happening because the problems are never addressed. So they're frustrated about the symptoms of the problem instead of taking time to find a solution for the problem. If you speak to someone inappropriately, apologize and work hard not to do it again. And I make the point of saying work hard not to do it again, because if you keep verbally abusing people and apologizing, then you're operating out of another dysfunctional unconscious belief. You can continuously mistreat people as long as you apologize. So you have to work to change your communication style. For the behavior of putting unrealistic expectations on staff and acting as if the expectations are within people's job descriptions, treat people like human beings who are trading their time for money. It's not a club. We're not in junior high. It's like, this is a professional setting. People are trading their time for money. So they don't have to be abused, or they don't have to accept abuse and act like it's not happy because they want to be liked or fit in, with the popular people. I don't understand. I saw a quote somewhere, and I usually like to appropriately cite people that I quote, but I can't remember the source. But the quote was, it's a difference between fighting for freedom and fighting for a chance to hold the whip, like being abusive to staff. And then other people who are moving up in ranks in the company, you've created people who suffer with this belief. If they're in a leadership position, they create a culture of abusive business tactics. So others who are moving up the chain of command, who's being promoted, it's like they're being trained to to get in a position where they can abuse other people. But that's hurting the company. It causes high turnover rates. People leave. There's some people who will stay and accept the abuse long term, but a lot of companies experience a huge amount of turnover because of abusive leaders, people in leadership positions being abusive. So reward people for going over and above during crunch time, because there are times when you do need to ask people to go over and above, but you need to reward them. If you don't reward them financially, do something, appreciation, comp time, something. People should be rewarded when they go over and above during crunch time. And then spread your shots. Ask different people to go over and above when needed. Don't keep asking the same 3 or 4 people to work, extra hours every week, and then everyone else leaves at the regularly scheduled time. For the behavior of neglecting your job duties and acting as if others are supposed to pull your weight and keep up with their job duties and act like it's not happening, do your job. You are getting paid to be a leader. Stop insulting people's intelligence. I've seen this at companies. I'm a consultant. I've worked for different organizations, and I've seen leaders who suffer with these types. They don't suffer. A lot of them are not really suffering, who are afflicted by these types of dysfunctional beliefs. I've seen them receive awards for the output of their staff, but that's not what the award says. The award says, wow, your company has these awesome outputs, and so here we're going to give you this award. And so the people who's working 60 and 70-hour weeks that are doing their job and the leader's job and overwhelmed and exhausted and hurt and angry, they have to suffer the indignation of sitting at an award ceremony and watch this leader who's being irresponsible receive an award, and they're expected to clap as they watch this person who causes sick often when they're not sick, go on multiple vacations, and they're usually sitting there wondering, how much vacation time do you have? How much sick time do you have? You're never here. But they have to sit at an award ceremony, expected to be at the ceremony, celebrating the person who's receiving an award for their work. For the behavior of calling in sick often when you're not sick, going on vacation after being off sick for a week, and greeting people who are pulling your weight with a hearty good morning when you come back. Work as hard as you expect others to work. Use sick days when you're sick. Spread your vacations throughout the year like you expect others to do. For the behavior of neglecting your job duties and calling a staff meeting to berate everyone for the problems that occurred due to your neglect, do your job. Acknowledge and reward people for assisting you when you need assistance with your work. People who are appreciated, who are acknowledged, who are rewarded for going over and above, they will do way more than they're being paid for if they're being treated with dignity and respect. So that's my podcast. That's all for this episode. If you would like more information about my trainings, I do 3-hour trainings, 1-day trainings, and 2-day trainings based on the topics that I talk about in my podcast. Feel free to contact me. I can be reached via email at afreeman@AnnesiaConsulting.com. I can also be reached via the contact page on either of my websites, AnnesiaConsulting.com or AnnesiaSpeaks.com. I'm also a motivational speaker with a powerful come from behind victory story. On my website, AnnesiaConsulting.com, I have a store page where I sell some of my workbooks and my cognitive restructuring cards. These 2 program manuals at the bottom, for people who's watching the YouTube video, you can see this, but other people are listening to the audio of this podcast, you can't see it, the pictures of my material. You can go to my website, AnnesiaConsulting.com, and click on the store page and see it. But I do have 2 program manuals, but they're not sold to the general public. they're used in my 5-day trainings, in which I train and certify other therapists and counselors and peer recovery coaches to use my award-winning adult and youth programs. I also have books on my website. So be sure to check out episode 4 of series 2. I'll release it next week. I release one episode per week. The topic for my next episode is improving the bottom line by updating your infrastructure. So I look forward to speaking with you next week.